Hey there, everybody. We're talking today about Facebook's new cryptocurrency. And there's a lot that we need to learn about this, David. So we're going to start here with just the basics. So break it down for us. Exactly what is Libra?
Libra is Facebook's new plan to create their own private cryptocurrency. Basically, Apple decided that they wanted to become essentially a bank with their own credit card. Facebook's taking it the next step up, and they're creating literally their own currency. The idea is that people all across the world can make payments using this currency, store their money in essentially a bank of Facebook, and be able to use that. Now, this is not storing your dollars in like PayPal. This is actually converting your money to Facebook's currency and then using and keeping your money in the Libra account, which is going to be essentially its own value system entirely. Now, the idea is that Facebook isn't running all of this. They're doing it through a consortium. But essentially, Facebook is trying to create its own new way of managing money worldwide.
You know, David, this isn't the first time that well, let me go back a little bit here. In your article, you talk about how Facebook says that they're reinventing money. So haven't we heard this before about, reinventing money?
Yeah, many times. And in fact, in the last 100 years or so, our culture has done that a number of times to, both the advantage of bankers, of course, who've made a tremendous amount of money off of it, and to us as well. For example, the checking system, where we have checks and checking accounts, and where you can pay somebody with a piece of paper that's not a dollar bill, or the credit card system, or PayPal, or wire transfers. All of those are ways of moving money around without actually using physical currency. And even physical currency is a reinvention of gold, because the actual value is pegged to the gold that's supposedly in Fort Knox. And so you've got a lot of retakes on the ability. Essentially, all of these are fundamentally the retakes on the ability to move value from one point to another with less and less friction. And cryptocurrency takes that one notch further, because most currencies are tied to a national currency, and the idea of cryptocurrency is to make this essentially a worldwide currency. And as you've heard with Bitcoin and many of the other sort of cryptocurrencies out there, there are many takes on this, in the same way that there are many stocks and companies. There are many cryptocurrencies. Facebook is the latest and undoubtedly will be the biggest, and that's the Libra.
And you mentioned Bitcoin, David. So with Libra, they'll be using blockchain. So how is this different, or is it not? Is this very similar to Bitcoin?
It's similar terminology. It's going to be run substantially differently. First off, Bitcoin was created by an anonymous person, and was created with the ability to mine currency, essentially to do computer calculations. And if your computer could do the right number of calculations fast enough, you could create your own currency. In Libra's case, you're not able to do any mining. All you're doing is you're buying into the currency and trading it for whatever value Facebook and the Libra organization sets for that value. And so it's much more like buying in-game money in something like World of Warcraft than it is mining and creating your own money as it is with Bitcoin. Bitcoin and Libra both share blockchain, which is a sort of decentralized database mechanism with encryption that usually is supposed to be completely decentralized and completely anonymous. But in Facebook's white paper, they said that they can't really make it totally decentralized because of the scale and speed at which they want to do the transactions. And so as a result, unlike Bitcoin, some of the blockchain will not be decentralized, which in some ways defeats the purpose. But those are your big differences. You're not able to mine. You're not able to, the blockchain is not decentralized, but Facebook and the other participants in Libra are going to try to maintain the value so that you're also not subject to the fluctuations of value the way Bitcoin has been. You won't necessarily invest a certain amount of money and theoretically have it drop to the floor. They're trying to make a stable currency so that what money you have in Libra stays that value, and that if it works, has some benefit.
Yeah, and David, you just taking off of that, Bitcoin hasn't exactly been, rock solid. So what's to prevent Libra from crashing, once you've given them your real money?
Well, first off, all of these things, even national currency, depends on the willingness of the users to support that currency, and that's why we hit recessions and depressions and things like that. Also, is because if not enough people use the money, then it doesn't have any value. Facebook, with the largest audience that we've pretty much seen in the history of mankind, has a pretty good chance of getting participation in this simply because of their astonishing user reach. But the Libra Consortium also has a variety of members, each of which are contributing $10 million into a pool. They're going to peg the value to a combination of the yen, the euro, and the dollar. So as a result, they're going to try to hold that value and maintain that value essentially through the force of the economies of these very large companies that are backing it.
And Facebook, David, formed the Libra Association. Talk about that a little bit. What it is.
Yeah, the Libra Association is Facebook. It's kind of Facebook's way of saying no. It's not just us. There's other people playing here too. You don't have to worry. It's just Facebook. The Libra Association has a variety of contributors. Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, eBay, for example, on the financial side, are all contributing or have promised to contribute $10 million to join into this. So basically, the buy-in for an organization to have a place at the table of the Libra Association is a $10 million check. So you've got those kinds of groups. You've got Uber and Lyft. You've got a wide variety of new blockchain companies who are participating in this. You have a bunch of venture capital companies, obviously, would participate in this. And then there's 3 or 4 nonprofits. And one of the reasons that the nonprofits are participating is one of the big claims about Libra is that it'll be able to bring currency and essentially banking to a smartphone to all of those people in the world who have a smartphone but don't have access to banking. And there is some value to that. Of course, you run into lots of questions when you look at that kind of situation, especially when you ask how are they going to originally buy into this thing, and also, how are they going to support this if they lose or have their smartphone stolen? The reality is, although there is a public interest component to this, it's really being used as sort of the marketing front for creating a new economic way of transferring and holding money on the part of these companies.
And while they've opened up, many seats at the table for other companies, David, as you mentioned, and the nonprofits and some of the blockchain companies and things like that, for Facebook, they don't want to be the lone wolf in this, obviously. But what for the companies? What's the upside of them participating?
Oh, there's a couple. First off, you'll notice that in this consortium is not Apple or Google or Amazon or Microsoft, nor are there any traditional banks participating in this, which may engender a degree of concern. The benefit of this is that there's really 2 parts of this, and one is that there's something going to be called the Libra Reserve, and the Libra Reserve is the big pot of money that everybody puts their dollars and yen and euros into to buy Libra. So you figure you've got this billion plus audience, of which some are going to all throw in some amount of money into Libra, whether it's $20 or a lot, depends on kind of where this thing goes over time. But you've got all of these individuals who are putting money into it. Now, where does that money go? It goes into the reserve. What happens with that money? Well, that money gets invested and interest is created from it, and its value grows. That the value of that interest, the value of the money that the Libra Reserve makes, is then split amongst the members of the consortium. So they're hoping basically to make a profit on the amount of money that you put into their coffers, very much like a bank would do, except that they're splitting it. Also, every transaction will have a little bit of a transaction fee attached to it, and the transaction fees will also go into the reserve, and therefore these companies are hoping they'll get a piece of that. In addition, when you're looking at MasterCard and Visa and PayPal and companies like that, just being able to see and have an inside track on what Facebook is doing, potentially to either reinvent currency or potentially to take away some of the value system that say Visa and MasterCard have. They have another way of participating, because if you think about it right now, the way we transfer money internationally is often through a credit card. Well, Libra would be a way of transferring that same money without the credit card, which means that it's a substitute solution. And what that means is the credit card companies, Visa and MasterCard, won't get those fees. The Libra Association will get those fees. And so by their participating, they're essentially hedging their bets.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That definitely sounds like there's some, positives here, and obviously some negatives that we're talking about and we'll be talking about, David. But and healthy competition possibly for banks is always a good thing. But what do you think about the government here? What's the government going to think about this? What are your thoughts?
Well, the interesting thing is it's not the government, it's the governments. There's many of them, because the idea of this, Facebook is a very, very international, has a very, very international user base. And so one of the big ideas is how to move money across national lines. Now, if you think about it, moving money across national lines is exactly when governments decide to get into the game. And this was what Bitcoin was a big part of. It was designed to create a currency that wasn't pinned to any national authority. The problem with that is most nations like having authority over money transfer. And so this is where there's going to be a lot of debate. Now, as I mentioned in the article, there's also lobbying and there's also influence. And you can be sure that Facebook and all of these other companies are going to exert a tremendous amount of influence among governments and actually among politicians across the world to push this through. But the bottom line is that governments like to get their piece of taxing from all of these things. And so there's going to be a whole pile of regulatory impact, especially if this thing takes off.
Yeah, no doubt, David. And the lobbying, I'm sure, will be just unbelievable, to say the least. Well, one of the things, though, that we can't not talk about is Facebook when it comes to privacy, as they're, obviously been on the hot seat time and time again when it comes to everyone's information. And we're talking about financial information here. So how bad could it be?
Oh, gosh. All right. So Facebook has set up a separate company, which is called Calibra. And Calibra is the company that manages the Libra wallet and manages the process of dealing with all of this money. Now, interestingly, Calibra is a subsidiary of Facebook, although Facebook says that it won't have access to your financial information. Only Calibra will have access to your financial information. And so the idea is that Facebook, who incidentally is embedding the Calibra wallet in Facebook Messenger, in WhatsApp, and probably in Instagram, won't actually have access to that information, even though they're embedding it in their software. So what they haven't said is whether or not Calibra is going to do anything with your financial information, not Facebook. But it's a very thin and dubious wall between what Facebook will have access to and what they want. And frankly, I'm not convinced, and a lot of people aren't convinced that Facebook won't do something with this, or Calibra won't start becoming the big new financial information mining company on the result of all of your financial data. We don't know how this is going to play off. I mean, Facebook has proven itself to be not a very trustworthy company when it comes to safeguarding our privacy, given that they make their living on not safeguarding our privacy. So entrusting them to our financial information or our financial wherewithal is troubling. Even just in terms of where we make purchases, they'll now have a much bigger view of exactly where that money goes to and from.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to up or change their PR game a little bit here, David, I think, to somewhat change the conversation, since so much of it has been focused on Facebook and the privacy issues. And if they're getting into this financial end of it with people, then we're definitely going to have to be feeling a little differently, I think, about Facebook on that. So lots to come on this, lots to talk about, David. So we appreciate your research on this one, and David's full article and much more on Libra can be found on ZDNet. Thanks for watching.